Hello guys, today we are talking about Russia-Ukraine crisis and war between the two countries. Russia has launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine after President Vladimir Putin authorized what he called a special military operation in the east. What led to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and what could come next? The attacks on Thursday came as weeks of intense diplomacy and imposition of Western sanctions on Russia failed to deter Putin, who had massed between 150,000 and 2 lakh soldiers along the borders of Ukraine. Here are 5 things you should know: what led to the invasion, what is happening now, and what could come next. Number 1. How did the invasion break out? Shelling in the Donbass region had intensified since Monday when Putin recognized the two breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent and ordered the deployment of what he called peacekeepers, a move the West called the start of an invasion. On Wednesday, the separatists issued a plea to Moscow for help to stop alleged Ukrainian aggressions, claims the US dismissed as Russian propaganda. Russia launched a full-scale invasion on Thursday, shortly after Putin said he had authorized military action to defend itself against what he said were threats emanating from Ukraine. Russian missiles hit multiple Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv, as Ukraine reported columns of troops pouring across its borders into the eastern Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Luhansk regions, and landing by sea at the cities of Odessa and Mariupol in the south. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared martial law and appealed to the world leaders to impose all possible sanctions on Russia, including on Putin, who he said wanted to destroy the Ukrainian state. Number 2. What is the background to the conflict? Ukraine, which was the part of Russian Empire for centuries before becoming a Soviet republic, won independence as the USSR broke up in 1991. It moved to shed its Russian imperial legacy and forge increasingly close ties with the West. Russia responded by annexing Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula and throwing its weight behind a separatist rebellion that broke out in Ukraine's east. Ukraine and the West accused Russia of sending its troops and weapons to break the rebels. Moscow denied that, saying the Russians who joined the separatists were volunteers. According to Kyiv, more than 14,000 people have died in the fight that devastated Donbas, Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland. For its part, Moscow has strongly criticized the United States and its Nato allies for providing Ukraine with weapons and holding joint drills, saying that such moves encourage Ukrainian hawks to try to regain the rebel-held areas by force. Furthermore, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly said Ukraine's aspirations to join Nato are a red line and expressed concern about plans by some Nato members to set up military training centers in Ukraine. This, he has said, would give them a military foothold in the region even without Ukraine joining NATO. Number 3. What does Russia want? It is more about what Russia does not want. Russia does not want Ukraine in NATO and has said as much in its list of security demands which were sent to the US last December. The demands include a halt to any NATO drills near Russia's border. It also wants NATO to withdraw from Eastern Europe. Putin, who denied for months that he was planning an invasion, has also called Ukraine an artificial creation carved from Russia by enemies, a characterization Ukrainians call shocking and false. Number 4. Could Ukraine join NATO? Ukraine is not a NATO member, but it wants to be. It is considered a partner of the alliance. Ukraine's admission to the alliance would require the unanimous approval of 30 states that make up the body. Before being considered for membership, NATO says Kyiv needs to root out scourges such as corruption. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in December rejected Russian demands to rescind a 2008 commitment to Ukraine that the country would one day become a member. President Joe Biden has been more ambiguous on the question. Number 5. What happens next? The full scope of the Russian military operation was not immediately clear. The US has predicted that a Russian attack to take Kyiv may cause up to 50,000 civilians casualties, along with that of thousands of Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. President Biden, who has ruled out putting US troops on the grounds in Ukraine, said Putin had chosen a premeditated war that would bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. He said he would speak to G7 leaders and promised Russia would be held. European Union Foreign Affairs Chief Joseph Borrell also promised the toughest financial sanctions the bloc had ever imposed. Washington and London have previously spoken of personal sanctions targeting the Russian president in the event of a major escalation in military action. Cutting Russia out of SWIFT financial system, which moves money from bank to bank around the globe, damaging Russia's economy immediately and in the long term. The move could cut Russia off from most international financial transactions, including international profits from oil and gas production, which accounts for more than 40% of the country's revenue. The US also holds one of the most powerful financial weapons against Putin if he invades Ukraine, blocking Russia from access to the US dollar. The US is considering imposing export controls, potentially cutting Russia off from the high-tech that, among other things, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg condemned Russia's reckless and unprovoked attack and said NATO allies would meet to tackle the consequences. UN Chief Antonio Guterres urged Russia, in the name of humanity, to step back from what could be the worst war since the beginning of the century, with consequences not only devastating for Ukraine but with an impact we cannot even foresee. I hope this video would be informative for you. If you like the video, please subscribe the channel and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Thank you.